How's everyone doing? It is Wednesday, June 7th at 12:24 p.m. Pacific. I'm a little later than usual, so apologies for that. For those of you that usually join us for WSO Live. So the way this format works, I'm here to answer anybody's questions about careers, interviews. They can be investment banking, private equity, hedge funds, trading, corporate finance, corporate development, you name it. Usually I try to host these once a week. It's been a little bit crazy, busy the last few weeks with some new cohorts starting for WSO Academy. So for those of you that are curious about what that is, feel free to go to wallstreetoasis.com/academy and you can check it out there. Let me pull up the comments here and see if we start getting some people in. Hi, Rafi. And Yash comes with the answer or question from Insta right away. Should I do, by the way, we're streaming from Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Insta. So your platform of choice. Hopefully we can find everybody. Should I do a master's in finance or a CFA? CFA, do that, Yash, if you're looking for more of like an asset management, hedge fund type role. Master's in finance I see it more as like a reset of being able to kind of brand yourself for finance roles, but more broadly, you can get into like banking from a master's in finance. But you have to know what you want prior to going into the MS in finance because it is typically only 1 year. So your recruiting happens right away, right when you start. So you don't want to go in thinking, oh, I'm going to explore a variety of finance careers because that tends to set you up poorly because you don't have enough time to kind of prep for the interviews. Hey, Natalia, how are you? Hey, Mohammed from LinkedIn. It's a good question. Let's see here. What are the expectations of an off-cycle interns regarding technicals? Would it tend to be more technical than summer interviews? Hey, Mohammed, good question. Hadn't thought of this. I think it probably not much more technical simply because I think for interns, the expectation isn't that you're going to know everything. I think what's still going to be a lot more important is how you come across. If you're likable, it's still important to know your technicals. Still important to know the basics at a minimum in terms of valuation, in terms of being able to walk through a DCF, be able to walk through the different valuation methodologies, being able to talk about working capital and all these things that show how to do some kind of basic financial modeling is always good. So yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be more technical. Since summer interviews, now the expectation is the bar is pretty high already. And it's usually what you'll have is like a balance of interviews that are more fit, behavioral based. And then usually there's a one or two, usually associates tend to be the more like rigorous technical interviews. And so you want to be prepped for those. Whereas like the MDs and the principals tend to be more kind of fit and trying to get to know you and your personality better. You're welcome. Let's see what Sam Shen from YouTube has a question here. I've gotten into grad school for a master's in finance and currently in the process of networking. I applied to Citizen Bank and their summer analyst position the day it was posted, and I was directed very soon. Okay. I have the qualifications for working in a middle market boutique and previous public finance IB working experience. So I guess your question would be, Sam, why did you get rejected so fast? So it could be something to do with your resume. Could look just a little bit too, it just might not be polished enough. Maybe you didn't know anybody at Citizens. When you talk about networking, I'd be curious to know, have you spoken with anybody at the firm prior to applying? A lot of people, the online application portal, we call it the black hole for a reason, because typically when you submit your resume, the odds of you getting selected for an interview are just slim to none. Even if you have top grades from a top school, your odds are still very low. So yeah. Okay. So Sam says you got your resume from WSO resume review. I would definitely want to take a look at it. If you want to shoot me an email, patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. I'm happy to look at it, see if there's anything that kind of is glaring to me from the resume review. If it's polished from the resume review, though, more likely the issue is just not having spoken with anybody at the firm. And so your odds, even with a very polished resume with top grades, top school, are still very low if you haven't spoken with someone. So that's why networking tends to be like top of the list in terms of ways to kind of different ways to improve your odds of landing interviews. Hi, Thomas. Welcome. Welcome, Bharat. Ooh, this is a good one. What's the best way to prep for psychometric tests? How to make sure we fit in? I know these are more common in the UK. I think there are some sites out there that kind of can prep you for these as well and kind of tell you how to do it. I think there's one called Job Test Prep or something. You can Google it. But yeah, I don't know. I never went through the psychometric test. It's a good question, but I think there are some firms out there that specialize in helping you prep for those. So I would look into that. Definitely going through it once or twice. Practice would be helpful. Hey, Spencer. Good question. What's the best way to approach full-time IB recruiting 2024 grad with a valuation internship this summer? So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is going to be extremely difficult for full-time IB recruiting this year to anyone that isn't a summer analyst right now for 2024, simply because the expectation is that the offer rates for the interns is going to be lower than historically. So you can think of like, if there's 100 interns at a specific bank or across the street, typically about 80 to 90 get return offers. Some banks dip into the 70 range, but I'd expect that to drop pretty considerably this year, especially if deal flow doesn't pick up before the end of the summer. So that the offer rates are probably going to be looking more in the 60 to 70% range. What that means is you could have 30 to 40 kids for every 100 kids out there that had summer analyst IB internships trying to land full-time as well for the limited seats that are out there. So the best way to approach full-time IB recruiting is to cast a very wide net and don't just assume you're going to get into IB. Make sure you're looking at Big Four transaction advisory services, or the advisory services group, TAS, they usually call it, TAS. Make sure you look at return offers for that valuation internship, because if you're getting that type of work, you're doing valuation work, when the market picks up, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to lateral a year or two after graduation. So you want to be just making sure you're getting the right skill set right now, even if you can't get the exact seat you want at an investment bank. So let's see what's going on here. What else do we have from people? YouTube crowd. Let's see. Hi, Patrick. I just accepted an offer to start at Bain in Western Europe. Super pumped about it. Would you say it would be, well, congrats. Would it be possible to pivot to a top bulge bracket elite boutique IB after a few years without the MBA? Coming from Bain, absolutely. I think that's going to be, again, a question of networking. They're going to look at you a little bit sideways and treat you a little more non-traditional. So it's important that you kind of build out that foundation and network at the BBs, at the bulge brackets and elite boutiques, but they may force you to start as a first-year analyst, or maybe like 6 months in. I've seen that happen before. It's a little bit, you always have the MBA to make that pivot official, but if you're super sharp and you show that you have the financial modeling chops, the valuation chops, and if you're smart about how you structure your resume so that your consulting resume coming from Bain looks a little bit more bankified, and I say that like instead of writing engagements, you instead of having like transaction experience like bankers do, you could have something like engagements, engagement highlights, and then that way you have it in the similar type of format as a banker resume, and then it kind of makes you and then you obviously are trying to highlight all the financial analysis you did rather than highlight the strategic stuff you did at Bain. So that would help you if on your projects you can do more of the financial oriented work, whether that's modeling, whether it's cohort analysis, whatever it is, something that shows you have chops in financial modeling would be helpful. Let's see. It's a good question. We're getting a lot of good questions today, Amir. So Longy asks, I currently work at a Big Four business consulting, but my long-term goal is to break into private equity. I've got an opportunity to join McKinsey Bain BCG. Does it make more sense to transition to, I think, strategy and transactions, or SAT and Big Four, go with MBB. I would say go with MBB, just for the brand. You'll be surprised how much prestige still matters in private equity and perception. So I think if you have MBB on your resume, it opens more doors, especially if you become really strong at networking and meeting the right people. So I would say MBB, to get yourself, it is going to be your second consulting job, so you may have to go to get an MBA. Although I would kind of avoid the MBA until you've exhausted all potential options of going into PE. I guess the question is, if you got the opportunity to join MBB, what's stopped you from kind of going the banking route to kind of get into more on-cycle recruiting for private equity? That would be my only question is, if you want private equity, why are you going the McKinsey, Bain, BCG route? It's a little bit harder than if you can get into McKinsey, Bain, BCG, you can usually get into at least a regional boutique or middle market investment bank. I actually think the interviews for MBB, on a whole, in terms of prep and everything, is actually harder there. So, hey Noah, good question. How would you approach recruiting for an endowment family office? This is really tough because what they say about the family offices is if you've seen one, you've seen one, because they're all so different and they all have such different dynamics. There's some that run more like a traditional like private equity shop, and there's some that are, have strong personality at the top and things are done completely differently. So in terms of how to recruit for one, I would try to like learn as much as you can, trying to find people who previously worked there, so you understand the kind of internal dynamics and the types of deals they like to do. Therefore, you can show that you've done your research and come across as more educated. And then once you know the types of deals they've done, if it's venture, kind of making sure you're sharp on those types of deals, if it's, earlier stage and growth equity, or if it's, more mature, late stage private equity deals, then, making sure you're well-versed in how to do PE deals, private equity deal process course that we offer comes to mind. And then let's say they like investing in real estate. Do you know how to look at real estate development and look at that as a potential asset class that the family office? So the good part about family offices, sometimes it's a pretty lean team, so you get to work on a lot of different types of deals if they like to dabble in different asset classes. So it can be a pretty cool job. The downside is it can also mean that your things are changing and strategies are changing frequently, and it can be a little bit unstable depending where you end up and who your boss is. And so that can be since it can be everything from like 2 investment professionals, 1 investment professionals to, 50 to 100. So it just depends on the size and whatnot. So kind of tough to say like the approach. Again, the recruiting here, you're usually not going to hear about these jobs. They're rarely posted on the typical job boards out there. You're going to have to, this is where networking really plays in. These are the types of jobs that can be very lucrative and very interesting work that you won't hear about unless you're talking to people who are, maybe exited private equity to go work at a family office, exited investment banking to go to a family office, and learning more directly from them what they are doing day to day. And that's really where you're going to get a big advantage and potentially even get into these recruiting processes. So that's what I would say. Let's see. Can networking overpower skills? Absolutely. Absolutely. Out of the 250 or so interviews I've done for the podcast, the WSO podcast, I'd say about 230 of them, when you ask them what's their big break, almost all of them say, hey, it's when I was talking to X, Y, and Z. I think you still need to have a certain level of skills, but a lot of the jobs that we're talking about here are sales jobs. They're, yes, take some financial modeling skills, but it's more about, do people like you? Are you a hard worker? That type of stuff. So the skills you don't need to be an actuary to be a successful investment banker, if that makes sense. This is just great questions flying in. I'm trying to look at Insta right now, see if I can grab somebody from there, because I feel like I've been neglecting them. Somebody said Patriots Eagles, the Barclays of American football. Come on, no way. Are you guys seeing deals pick up? I'm starting to see secondaries come back. Honestly, I'm so far removed, so that's a good question. I don't know. You guys can maybe say in the comments. So SBZS says, do I need a finance degree to get into M&A? I'm currently doing supply chain management masters. Well, I can tell you one thing: supply chain management masters will not help you get into mergers and acquisitions. So you, not to be mean, but you probably should have thought of that before you did the supply chain management masters, because that's probably going to hurt you more than it's going to help you in terms of trying to go to M&A. How would you approach switching from ECM to M&A? If this is an internal transition, you have to be very careful. So I think the best way to do this is make sure you start networking with the bankers that are in M&A, asking more questions, going out to coffee with them, developing a stronger relationship with them, and letting them know, hey, if there was ever an internal opportunity to interview for a role, I'd definitely be open to it. M&A really is interesting to me. I wouldn't go to your boss. That may leak to the boss there, which he or she may go to your boss in ECM. And so you have to be prepared for that. That's where it's a little bit risky, because if you're not doing a good job in ECM, you could lose your job because they could just get pissed. They're like, yeah, this person's not even good. They're trying to transition to M&A. Now, if you're a top analyst, top ranked analyst, or at least top half, you're a little bit safer because you're carrying your weight, if not more. And so you actually networking or talking to people in M&A isn't going to be looked at. It might annoy them, but it's not like putting your job at risk. So you have to know a little bit about more the internal transition culture of your firm. Some places they say it's okay, and HR will say, yeah, come to us and talk. But in reality, the MDs may feel more ownership toward you and may make your life really tough if you're trying to do that. Other places really do push it, and it's much easier to make that internal transition. So you have to just study a little bit about like how frequent that is. You maybe even talk to HR without saying like, hey, you're saying I love my work at ECM. I'm not saying I want to go, but like down the road, if there was an opportunity in some other groups, how would I go about kind of voicing that concern without kind of, I obviously want to keep my relationships really strong with my bosses because I really appreciate what they've done and what they've taught me. But I did want to know, like in the future, if there are opportunities in other groups, how would one go about doing that without it being, without kind of annoying my superiors, annoying my bosses, such that I could potentially make that transition successfully. And I think that would be a good way to kind of carefully plant the seed that you may be looking at other places. And they may ask you, well, where would you want to be? And you could say M&A or blah, blah, blah. And then you'll get a sense of like how realistic that is internally. The other option is, of course, start interviewing externally with the reason of saying, hey, I've loved ECM. I've learned a lot. I just feel like my learning curve has flattened out a little bit. I've always been fascinated with M&A. It would be great if I could, and this is why I'm looking for to move to your firm. I know you have a great reputation. You guys do have a lot of deal flow. And then on top of that, the internal transition at my firm is a little bit more difficult to do than what I would have hoped. And I think that all the interviewers will appreciate that. That is a very tough thing to do, is transition internally. So it won't be looked at negatively. And it's actually a great reason to be looking. So let's see what else we have here. This is great. You guys are just firing away today. I think we got to do it 10 minutes late every week. Okay, Edel says, is it a good idea to aim for a career in trading with this artificial intelligence era? So no, it's not a good idea. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, there's still a role for traders in the AI era. It's just a shrinking role. And actually, we were talking about this in the Slack chat of WSO Academy today with the students there, and some of them were concerned, like, is the investment banking analyst role going to be become obsolete or disappear with AI? And it's a really fascinating question, because you would see the stuff, the more menial, repetitive type of work, like the pitch book creation, financial modeling, that type of stuff, be some of the first things to get that AI would be able to do. Whereas the last things to be automated would be more like you can't really automate the relationship business at the top that the MDs are bringing. So, but I think people always like to have the fear mongering of like, it's going to replace all the analysts in 3 or 4 years. That would shock me. That would shock me because banks move slowly. Relationships still matter. They still need to groom bankers to be senior bankers because, when you're doing the pitch, you're not going to have a robot doing the pitch, at least not yet, at least not for a while. So, where relationships and trust matter, especially on the advisory side, pure advisory side, it's a lot safer from AI for a while. So yeah, that's what I would say. I'd say over the years, we'd expect each analyst to dramatically increase the potential, the productivity of each analyst should explode over the next years. But when Excel was introduced to the financial markets and to these financial institutions, you didn't see the size of the analyst classes shrink. You saw the actually increase. And so you can make an argument of like, this is just making everyone more efficient. There's more leverage in the system. So that could mean that you're able to generate 3 times the number of pitch books, high quality pitch books in the same amount of time, such that you can pitch more and you can bring in more revenue and grow the business that way. So I think the banks that do leverage AI are going to have a big advantage in terms of being able to supercharge their analyst classes. But I don't think the banks that are looking to like replace and cut all their analysts are going to be the ones that are going to win long run, because I think, you need to have that next generation coming up through the ranks to take over in, 5, 10, 20 years. So that's all I'd say. And it's still a sales relationship driven business at the top. Let's see what else we got going on here. I think that's you, Amir, leaving a really funny comment. Is this us stroking our ego, patting ourselves on the back? Let's see what else we got. Okay. Michael on Insta asks, I would like to have a job that's high energy. I was thinking about investment banking, trading, or trading in general. Would this be the right career choice? Hey, Michael. It's really it's a personal kind of decision. Banking definitely is, pretty fast paced. Trading's a little bit more like market hours, long hours, but you're able to go home, but then you're never really turning off because you're always concerned about the markets. So, yeah, if you're into like high energy, intense, fast paced, I think it could be a good career choice for you. You just have to be ready to sacrifice those first few years out of school significantly. It's not a walk in the park. So, yeah, love all the questions, everybody. I'm reading questions here. Ollie asks, how could you tell me how to get into quant trading at an investment bank? Hey, Ollie, good question. I really don't know much about that. I would say, is there a reason you want to do quant trading in an investment bank and not one of the top quant shops? You got Jane Street, you got, Citadel, you got all these prop trading companies. You actually can go to the company database, wallstreetoasis.com/company. You can filter by prop trading firms. You can look at all the top ones there. I would look at those and see how to get into those and look up some forum discussions on this. There's a lot of discussions on prop trading over the years and how to kind of position yourself. But my guess is most of these places take few and far between, and they're taking some of the top college grads in engineering and computer science out there. So in terms of how to showcase yourself, you probably want to demonstrate that you have those skills where you can hit the ground running immediately. And obviously, show the technical skills. So Didia comes back with a follow-up question. Would you say that it would be better to do 1 to 2 years at Bain and maybe downgraded to analyst 1 IB, or do 2 years of being MBA recruit as MBA associate, no downgrade and easier? It depends what your long run goal is. Your long run, do you want to be a banker for life? You want to be like a MD in banking? Are you looking to go private equity? If you're looking to go private equity, I would say do the first one, 1 to 2 years of Bain, downgrade to A1 and IB so you can get an on-cycle recruiting. If you go to the MBA, do 2 years of Bain, go to the MBA, you're done. Like you have almost no chance of getting into private equity. I think out of the 200 plus people I've interviewed who are all very successful, I think I had like 1 or 2 people that started in banking post MBA and were able to make the transition to private equity. And it was incredibly difficult because you're competing for post MBA seats, which are fewer than the pre MBA seats, number one. Number two, you're competing against all the people who already had that pre MBA private equity experience. So it's really tough to make the transition to private equity post MBA. But if you're looking to stay in banking, the MBA is a more surefire way to get into the path. What I would advise you to do is after year 1 at Bain, start prepping your applications for your MBA. Take the GMAT. It's good for I think 5 years. You're fine there. All the while, try to make that transition to Analyst 1 and IB for the step down. If you aren't successful after a year, then you enroll and you go get the MBA, so you have more of that surefire path. If not, you can always, if you're not successful, you can always go do the actual MBA and then get in that way. So I kind of tell you to go that way. If you can avoid the MBA, avoid the 2 years and the huge expense and get to the same place, that's fine. And you may still have the option of the MBA later, because if you're at a private equity fund, that kind of requires it to get promoted. There's that. From LinkedIn, what career path could you take to a portfolio manager without taking the IB step? So portfolio manager is a super broad term. I'm not sure if you mean it like a hedge fund, asset manager, even private wealth management. Some of them call themselves PMs as you get higher up. I think CFA is great for this. Equity research, rather than going to investment banking, could be good. And then there are places that will take a shot at a kid right out of school if you show the chops in the markets. You can get to a small hedge fund and show like just a traditional long short. There is a way to go there and just start slowly building your skill set and growing from there. What kind of IS positions are there in IB? I don't understand. Christian, sorry, I see your question. I'm not sure I understand it. Let's say. So Shahir says, what's your advice to make an early mark in their role, especially as their first year? What traits would be seen highly in the workplace? So I think that one of the most important things is just see where you can add value and make the people that are above you, their lives easier. So if you can take things off their plate, that's always good. See what they're doing, see if you can actually help do it for them before they ask. I think taking notes, always have a notebook and actual physical notebook and piece of paper while you go around, so you don't have to ask when you're sitting or shadowing somebody. You don't have to ask the same question twice. You kind of get it the first time and then you clarify if you're not sure how to do something before you leave and go try to do it and then come back 3 hours later saying, well, this is what I did and it's all wrong. Ask clarifying questions if you're not sure. Asking a lot of stupid questions those first few months is much better than kind of floundering for 6 months. I would say ask clarifying questions. If you don't know how to do something, say so, and say, I'm willing to learn. I'm ready to work. Is there any resources I could look at to help me get up to speed faster for you? And just kind of be more humble, be more aggressive in terms of just trying to make their lives easier. And that attitude can go a super long way in terms of people respecting you, people wanting to work with you, and developing a great reputation. So I do that. All right, guys, a couple more here. Let's see. Excuse me. There's lots of questions. I'm trying to decide which one to grab here. So Rafa says, I'm confused while choosing my career. I had interest in management consulting, but now accounting excites me, which is my bachelor's degree. So if accounting excites you, that's rare. So you should probably lean into that, because if accounting excites you, like, that's probably what you should be doing. So especially if like you can stick around and go into audit and do accounting, do even transaction advisory services, get into the big four, gives you a lot of options. So I would definitely look into that. The other thing I'd look at is like see if you can find on Wall Street Oasis, or just Googling day in the life of XYZ, and try to really get a sense of what it's like day to day. Because while management consulting is much more kind of strategic thinking, higher level analysis, accounting is a little bit more regimented, from what I've seen in my friends kind of going in those two routes. So it's really kind of more of a question of, do you like more of a structured routine, where you're kind of going client by client. So a little in accounting would be a little more structured in terms of like the types of services you're providing them, or would you prefer something where you're getting put on very different types of engagements and working a little bit more on the strategy side? That's kind of tough to answer, because I don't know your personality. I don't know who you are. So I think we're going to call it for today. We'll do a short one. I'll try to get back next week for sure. Yeah, and then if any of you have any questions in the meantime, definitely fire away. Thanks, everybody.